Welcome into the Business on Purpose podcast. Your host of the podcast, Scott Beebe, the head coach, the founder of the Business on Purpose platform. The myth of the overnight success is what I want to talk about just for a couple of minutes. Had the opportunity to just get out of a meeting with a couple of guys that I meet with every single week. And one of the things we were talking about was the connection between Genesis and Exodus. So just hang with me for a second. In the Old Testament of the Bible, it's a very condensed, as one of the guys mentioned, it's really a highlight reel. And we've got to remember that because we live in a culture today of highlights, as we well know, is well documented. In fact, there are entire sports channels that are nothing but highlights. They go from highlight to highlight to highlight, either in a daily wrap-up show or even in live events. Think of the NFL. They've got, I forget the name of the product, but essentially Red Zone TV, maybe something like that, where any team that is in the red zone about to score, they switch to that channel. So you just see the highlight point of the game. And so the entire day, you could have your entire day of NFL football filled with nothing but highlights. But you never see the drive. You never see the grind. In fact, it's even more intense than that, because if all you saw was the drive to the touchdown, you don't even see the grind before that, because football is not a 5-month sport. Football is not a Sunday sport. Football is not a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, travel to the game, play the game, travel home kind of sport. Football is a grind all throughout the year. Yeah, they may get a month off, maybe 2 months entirely off, but even then they can't be entirely off. They can't come back 40 pounds overweight. It's a grind. And when you see somebody get into the NFL, it was a grind to get there. You know, I've got a story that I played football at the University of South Carolina. I'd never played a down of deep snapper in my life before I snapped my first ball at LSU in 1994 in Baton Rouge in front of 80-something thousand people. Well, I didn't just show up and do that. There was a grind of hours and hours and hours and hours and hours in a dorm room hallway to snap a football. And I could go on and on. Seth Godin says I was an overnight success and it only took me 14 years to get here. Statistically, and most likely what you're doing right now, you're in the grind. Everything is a culmination of a series of events. Everything you do is a culmination of a series of events. When you show up at a party, it's a culmination of the hours that you spent getting ready in preparation for that party. Everything is a culmination of something else. We need to encourage ourselves, and the reason I'm doing this podcast, this particular episode, honestly, is not for you, it's for me. Because I get lost in the culmination of the event and forget about the grind. I get lost in the highlight and forget about the months or years that it took to get there. We added up the number of coaching hours that we have put in over the last 3 years, and I realized that as much as I love it, we've been putting in the grind. And we're not even putting in the grind to get to a particular place, although we do have a vision. But a lot of times I need to remind ourselves, and I want to remind you, that sometimes God is there to surprise us with what the preparation is culminating towards. Everything is a culmination of something. The win that you have is a culmination of a series of events. You might be an overnight success to the world, but you know the grind that you put in behind the scenes. I want to encourage us that life is not a group of highlights. At the end of chapter 1, Exodus chapter 1, or actually in the middle of it, from verse 6, 7, and 8, there seems to be a passage of decades of time. In just those 2 verses, decades of time. Remember that most of what you see is a highlight of what's real, and that everything is a culmination of a bunch of events. I want to encourage you. Be encouraged. Put in the grind. Put in the work. And trust that God is putting all of that together for something that's going to make a beautiful canvas. Thanks for joining me on the Business on Purpose podcast. If you need clarity, go to mybusinessonpurpose.com/vision. See you next time.